This is a short video just to demonstrate the erection of the club HF antenna and a couple of VHF antennas, just to make sure that it goes up correctly. The storage facilities have been changed recently, and we now have a chest, a lockable chest, in which all the aerial bits and pieces are kept. And also we have a special storage tube to keep the actual mast itself away from the weather, as you can probably see on the camera now. The keys, by the way, are held by me and also Bruce, so if anybody needs any keys, they know where to come. I'm holding them because I'm the nearest person to the society at the moment, to the club meeting place. Okay, so let's have a look at the mast itself. Okay, well the Clark mast, which the society owns, is stored in this tube, which originally was designed to fit on top of a vehicle, and it suits our purposes admirably. It's lockable, it's weatherproof, and keeps the mast perfectly safe. It's locked with a key underneath, and simply unlocking it, opening the end, and then the mast can be withdrawn from the tube. The pneumatic mast is held by these two clamps, which are fixed to this handrail here, very, very simply indeed, and a quick release, which we'll now demonstrate. We're just going to withdraw the mast from the tube. It is actually a better if it's a two-man job, really. And then it's carried over to the clamps, and it's mounted so that the air valve is pointing to your left and clear of the ground. The clamps are tightened, and the mast is now ready for extension after we've put the HF aerial, fastened the HF aerial to the top of it. We took the mast out of the tube to start with because it enables the lid to be lifted easily. The mast is not very light and it helps us just to lift the lid basically. So if we can lock the chest now, and we'll see what the contents looks like. We get the right key. There we go. Okay. Everything we need is inside the chest here for both the HF doublet aerial and the two VHF aerials, one beam and one dual band vertical. So first of all, we'll unload the first thing to come out are the step ladders, which are put by the pneumatic mast to enable the mast to be raised safely by a person standing on the steps and assisting the man pumping the air at the bottom, which is not a very good job, but it's got to be done. Okay, the next thing to come out is the pump, and that's attached to the bottom of the mast on the little valve.
Can you see that, Paul?
Yeah. It's pushed right in, and that's it, fine. The next thing to come out of the chest is the box containing the aerial bits and pieces, the HF equipment, and it's all in there, everything you will need for the job. And Bruce is now holding the doublet, which was specially cut for the job and fits in very well on this particular site. Okay. You'll notice that both Bruce and I have donned our helmets, which are also carried in the chest, simply because we're going to now raise the mast, and if anything falls off, we don't want it to be hit on the head with it. We've now attached the centre of the of the doublet to the top of the mast. There's a three-pronged unit at the top of the mast there with holes in. It's very obvious where it goes to. A D-shackle, and the aerial is always on the building side of the mast, not away from the building, so make sure that the aerial is as shown there on the video. The two legs are run out straight across along the path. One is marked east and one is marked west. The western end goes towards the gate, the main gate, and the eastern end towards the hedge where the bushes are. We'll now attempt to pump the mast up. Bruce has very kindly to do the hard bit, which is the pumping at the bottom of the mast there, and each section of the mast is locked by a screw. Just to mention at this point, we don't use the very top section because it's too whippy, so we leave that one locked. It's the second one down that we start at, and we undo that one, and away we go. Just demonstrate that to you. We take the lock off. If my colleague can start pumping, there we go. And once it clicks into place like that, it's all right, Bruce. We can now lock that section up as tight as we can to stop it slipping. Undo the next one. If Bruce kindly carries on. And again, tightened up, and so on until all the sections are used out of the mast. The mast is now fully deployed, apart from the very top section. As I said, we don't use anymore because it's too whippy. We're now just going to show you where the aerial is terminated at the far end, at both the eastern and the western ends of the aerial. This is the end of the western leg of the aerial. Little label there tells you it's the western end. When erecting this, please try and avoid the picnic tables and things which are under the western leg. So over in the corner here, we pan through. This is where the hook is, where the aerial is terminated. And there we go, that's the western end. We'll now go and have a look at the eastern.
Right, the other end of the doublet, the eastern end, comes across from the mast to the hedge, as Dave mentioned earlier, and the hook is mounted on the fence here, and simply hook the eye onto the hook, and that's the other end attached.
The aerial's now fully deployed on top of the mast, and this is the end of the feeder which is going into the operating room. It's very simply goes through this little window here and drops down inside, and then either fits to a ballon if necessary, or to an ATU or whatever you wish to use depending on the band in use. So far we've just talked about the HF capability of the mast. It also can be used to support the UHF antennas, such as this dual band vertical, which will drop straight in at the top. There's a tube at the top of the mast which has got three locks on it. You just push it in, tighten it up, and there's your feeder. Drops down the mast and into the window as the twin feeder did. So that's a dual band vertical at 2 meters and 70 cents. As well as the vertical, we've got this 5-element 2 meter Yagi, which is a very nice antenna to use on top of the mast here. It's got a built-in choke, as you can see, with the coils of coax there. Unfortunately, the original design wouldn't fit inside the chest, so I had to modify it. I'll just demonstrate that now. The first thing is to get hold of the front end of the aerial, which I'm holding in my left hand, and the little jointing piece which says top on it. Obviously this is the top of the aerial. That slides into there, and then a nut and bolt, or a wing nut and a bolt, is fitted to hold it stiffly. Okay, and this is the other end here. Just take that off. And that fits into the other parts of the aerial, like so. And there we have the 5-element 2-metre beam. The feeder for the 2-metre beam is actually some RG213, I think it is, with an end connector on, which simply mates up with the female connector on the aerial. Screw that up and put a bit of tape around it, possibly to keep the weather out if you're staying for an hour or two, or if the weather looks nasty, just to protect it. So that's fine, we won't put that on at the moment. Because it's a beam, obviously it's advantageous to point it in whichever direction is right at the time. So very kindly John has lent us this rotator on permanent loan. It's a manually turned one, which is very good. So basically the aerial slots into the top of that, we tighten it up, and then the bottom spigot on the rotator fits into the top of the aerial mast, and obviously the lanyards drop down the mast so we can actually turn the thing round. So there we have the rotating 2-metre beam. Everything is put back into the chest in reverse order. It's very important that this is done because things will not fit otherwise and could well be damaged. So the first thing to go in is the driven element part of the 2-metre beam, which goes in as shown. And then on top of that we have the front end of the beam. And not forgetting the little joint piece, which is just on the bottom. That's most important. Okay, just the procedure for taking the HF aerial down. The first thing to do is just unhook the ends. So this is the eastern end, just unhooking it from the fence, and then just proceed to wind it back onto the winder in an orderly fashion. When winding the dipole onto the spools, just wind enough on to rest on the ground, as can be seen here at the bottom of the mast, because the mast is still erected, of course. Before we lower the mast down, the wise thing to do is to remove the pump to let all the air out. Thank you, Bruce.
Not that there was any in there.
Now we just collapse the mast by each section, undoing its lock, and the aerial should just come down of its own accord, as it is doing at the moment. That's the first section done. Okay, this is the last section coming down. And here we are at the top of the aerial again, with the dipole attached to the top. Okay, as you can see, everything is now back in the plastic box. The aerial, the feeder, the gloves, everything that's required is actually in the box. So Bruce is now going to stow it. And the next thing to go in is the 2-metre aerial, the vertical.
Just goes in lengthways.
Just goes lengthways near the back. And then the pump. And the VHF feeder. And not forgetting the hard hats, which have to go back in the chest. And the very last thing to go on are the step ladders, which are fitting little shelves at the top. So you can see why everything's got to go back in order. It's alright, Bruce, you're on me.
There we go.
There we go.
All done?
All done. The final job is to stow the pneumatic mast inside its outside its container. So Bruce is now taking it out of the clamps.
We would do if you did undo them.
And it's very important before we do this is if we could get all the clamps on the mast in line, because the aerial has to go in
With
to
the
the
valve.
container at an angle.
They need to be lined up with the valve.
Not necessarily. It's okay. So, shall we enter it into the? It should slide in, and as you can see on this end, we've got the valve and another fitting at a 45-degree angle, which is designed to fit cross corners in the box, in the fitting. There we go. And there we are, job done.